Yeah, I mean, it's just Luke Ford and the dangers of e-personality. And he's an introvert, incel or whatever. And when he comes out on the internet, he has this, like the dark side of his subconscious becomes conscious. I mean, to me, it's obvious. It's what happens. It's what's happening to you on the same way. But your unconscious, your subconscious is different than Gandalf's subconscious.
Logic and science dictate that not only consciousness doesn't exist, consciousness is in fact scientifically impossible. And like, yes, it is going to involve math and calculus and science and computer programming. I'm sorry. And that have different implications of the process with the connection between the levels of a person's soul and how it reincarnates.
But I'm not going to spur on the issue because I'm not a woman. It's not my issue.
About how one day you're going to fulfill the Canadian dream or the American dream. So you watch Seinfeld and say, oh, I can do it. I'm going to go out tomorrow and go to work and have a great day, and I'm going to be successful. And one day I'm going to have my own apartment. I'm going to have my own parties with my own friends over, and I'm going to have my own possessions. I'm going to see things that I want and just buy them.
Yeah, but that's just so to say, a worthless opinion of yours.
Awesome. Hello, and welcome back to Week in Review with the one and only Doovid. I am your host, Church of Entropy, Jen Sharp. Very happy to be here today for our, I believe it's 127th episode. My gosh. Quite amazing how far we've come. Looking forward to the show. Today I just have to hook up a few last feeds here, but I'll hand it over to you without further ado for the introduction. Doovid, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Okay, yeah, great. Good to be back. Interesting week, I guess. This week, nothing super exciting. I spoke with the guy Uber Soy on Monday. I'm not sure if he's going to post it. I guess it's like partial Russian Israeli right wing leaning guy. He seemed young and in school, and so it's unclear whether. But I spoke with him a few hours. We'll see if he posts that. Also, Charles Moskowitz Thursday is regular. He's coming out with a new book. So actually, he asked me. He wants me to start booking him on other shows. So I mentioned to Politically Provoked that has Luke Ford on Tuesday. So maybe they'll get Charles on, or Right Reaction Ralph. I messaged him also. So I think you'll see how that works. So I could start booking, try to move these streams somewhere. Don't want to keep on being narrowcasted. So try to expand that. This guy Robert for Islam for Europeans, Thursday afternoon, Thursday night, we spoke on his channel about 2 hours. Interesting conversation. I was supposed to have my stream with Ben Watkins today, and it appeared that got canceled. I'm not exactly sure. Scheduling errors. I guess like Arjun and Ben are both young fathers and have a hard time scheduling or sticking to their schedule. So unfortunately, that was pushed off. But I did a lot of preparation for that one. So
I was really looking forward to that, but sure it'll be great when it eventually happens.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what pardon me, happens with that. I guess Politically Provoked, that woman Brittany was injured, so there was no Saturday Night Pop on. Although she messaged me, she wants me to debate Culture Thug, who I guess the guy Carl last week was talking about. So we'll see if that's interesting. I'm not sure. I said I'd do it, but I'm not exactly sure how interesting that's going to be.
Well, at some point you just feel bad, right? It's like with that guy that Teach had me talk to, it's just like, why am I doing this?
Well, just because there's nothing else really. I mean,
I know it's the comedy, right? It's like, this is for comedy value. It's infotainment, at least for me. I don't know about you, but I feel like with some of these debates, I almost should be prefacing them that way.
Yeah, no, I don't believe in comedy. In fact, I'm reading a book right now on the psychology of comedy, and so it's just the bad karma of the current situation. That despite all the useful things that I've learned with my life, the only people who want to talk to me are basically trolls, basically people trying to step me up, God forbid, trying to do me physical harm. But God forbid, that's probably the current bad karma of the situation we're living in. People in the U.S., see that, and unfortunately, that's just the world we're living in. So,
well, I think you have hot takes, so I hope that counts for something.
Yeah, so I kept on doing my research. I did a lot of math and science research. So why don't I jump straight in with screen share just so I could get the stuff off my desktop. I saw Wonder Crabbit did a video, so I'm not sure if he's back, but he actually had an interesting video of some like geology. So if he pops around, I was actually liked his most recent videos and maybe even the best
Yeah,
one
he's a
made
fun
yet.
guy. I was wondering if we were going to see him again, and I'm glad we did.
Okay, is my screen share working?
Yeah. You could tell me what you think if you want it to be any bigger than that, but this is sort of the only way to fit the comms in. But yeah, that's before I actually screen shared.
Okay, well, you might as well just give me full screen because the comments are just going to be my links. Okay, so first one, this is John Hopkins, and I guess still about COVID-19 aerial transmission engineering perspective. And so it's, I guess that, ironically, it's still science doesn't really understand how it's transmitted exactly, how replication of the virus could get into.
That's not ironic, I don't think, but okay.
Well, even like the 6 feet social distancing, wearing masks. Yeah, I mean, just that there's very little answers, and so the current state of knowledge on how does a virus get into the air and spread by air. So I mean, it should be relatively a simple matter of physics. So show some of these equations we've looked at in the past, and so really there's still quite a bit of unknowns, and things like social distancing, how long things linger in the air, how big surprisingly don't have that good of answers. But so John Hopkins.
Well, but if it functions on a quantum mechanical basis and they're not modeling it as such, how accurate is any of it going to be? Just food for thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're not going to model it on a quantum level. They're going to model it on.
Well, you don't know that. It does appear that to some extent they were. I mean, whether something is de facto quantum is not just about whether it's being implemented on a quantum computer. It's the model itself. It did appear to be somewhat quantized, as there was like an aerosol mist going out of the guy's mouth, but then the amount of uptake changes as a function of how much exposure you have to the virus, theoretically. I mean, it's not inconceivable. So that's the part that's hard to model. That's where it gets quantized in a way that I'm sure they're not modeling it this way. But anyway, continue, please.
Yeah, I mean, so it's kind of like climate change, and there's certain things that are demonstratable, but at a explanatory level, there's many gaps. So my stream with Ben Watkins didn't happen today.
Maybe he should get a different picture, because I'm sure he could look a lot better than that.
Yeah, I'm not sure he cares that much, but
so what is Luke doing on PP there? He is being interviewed or dogpiled in a debate, or what?
Yeah, it doesn't look like a debate. It just looks like an interview, so it's unclear what's going to be. So it looks like Brittany's messaged me. It could be the week after this Friday. I'll be daytime talking with culture.
Looks like you're a star now. I'm so happy.
Yeah, I mean, no, unfortunately, it's mostly negative. But I mean, I guess it's
You think so?
bad publicity is better than being ignored because it's thankless. No Jews are ever gonna thank me for doing what I'm doing, and it's basically negative. Vast majority of the people who watch it are just going to be against me. So it's basically just pure duty, a thankless job, unfortunately. And it's supposed to be politically provoked. Saying like, but I mean, the current state of the corruption in the U.S. politics. That I mean, people just want to basically kill each other. Um, then then learn something, have some sort of reconciliation. It's probably going to get worse, but I'll probably do it anyways. I mean, that's really all that's available right now. Um, try to work out of this somehow, but it doesn't seem like it's going to happen. It doesn't look like anything better is on the horizon. So here was yesterday's late morning with Namarasa. So Jagannath Das happened to be VIP number 4 in Squid Game, and he's a Prabhupada disciple.
What does that
No,
mean?
not
Sorry, Squid Game.
that's the Korean most popular TV thing in the world. That dystopian thing where people in bad economic situations have to play kid games, and the loser gets killed. But then there's some monetary gain.
So it's adults playing a kid game. So it's like Battle Royale, but with adults.
I'm not sure if I saw Battle Royale, but yeah, I mean it's some sort of
beginning
dystopian.
Of the movie is the end where it's just like this one girl walking out of. Anyway, I won't spoil it for you, but it's unnerving.
When
you've seen one, I didn't even watch. You don't need to see any more. Yeah, exactly. I don't want to watch this one either.
And but it was ironic that it was a Hare Krishna devotee who played VIP number 4, and he actually, he said he got paid very well. He didn't want to do it, but I guess like God forbid he's got like a gay.
Oh, I'm sure he really didn't want to do it at all. I'm sure he was just crying the whole time he was signing the contract, just torn up about it. Really, like all those Jane diamond.
His role, I mean, it's pretty bad. Yeah, I guess like it's like he's like have some like homosexual scene. He's naked and he ends up getting like beat up, and so it's pretty bad. But he got paid pretty big. So I mean, he's basically meant to look like the blue-eyed villain of the West, and he does it pretty well. But it turns out he's a Hare Krishna devotee. So it was an interesting interview. So here, Michael Sisko to show this woman and Wilson Smith wrote a book about Charlottesville trials this week. Jason Kester's on trial, Richard Spencer, and the name slipping me. I guess they call him the crying Nazi, are defending themselves. The trial's not publicized. The civil trial I mentioned last week, the SPLC, Cantwell. So here's Cisco interviewing Jason Kessler. I also saw Jason Kessler was on Countercurrents yesterday. So I've been reading still this book by John Derbyshire on Riemann's prime number theorem, or the zeta function. And I saw in the bibliography this book by Jacques Hadamard, The Psychology of Invention in the Mathematical Field. And I looked through it. Actually wasn't that interesting, but I'll put in the link anyway. It's not a free copy. It's over 100 years old. Just kind of like how you go about trying to solve problems mathematically. Maybe we'll talk more about Riemann and the zeta function and the prime number theorem. I think I mentioned that last week. So I said here was a survey on Jews in Chicago. Demographics, interesting stuff. So like educational, economic achievement, where people live, and I saw a video about the Jews of Chicago, so I checked that out, and then I saw the study, which was basically what I was going over. So I posted the study also. Pretty interesting for people into demographics. Also, my mother comes from Chicago. Here was a small channel wasn't that good. I watched a few videos, thought I'd show it, only 90 videos, but he had a few videos on Hegel, Bergson, concept of time, consciousness. It's just a small time streamer. Like it'd be better if we could actually reach out and speak to some of these people who are producing content, although that may not be possible. Here's another small video, Cambridge Declaration of Consciousness. So actually, all of these videos are quite good. This one was more interesting, so let me talk about this one a second. So I guess this was some Polish university, and they had a few videos on evolutionary psychology. Video number 2 of When Men Behave Badly, the Hidden Roots of Sexual Deception, Harassment, and Assault by David Buss was quite interesting on evolutionary psychology, why the origins of God forbid sexual deviancy from evolutionary psychology point of view. And there were a few videos all related. I watched all 6 of the videos, but I would encourage watching this one, the Why Men Behave Badly, the Hidden Roots of Sexual Deception, Harassment, and Assault from an evolutionary psychology point of view. And David Buss has a book coming out on that. 7th World Parliament of Science, Religion, and Philosophy happening right now. I guess I saw it on the MIT channel. It really looks like all Hindus. Only Hindus are really interested in this stuff, and like Indian Hindus. So I didn't actually watch any of it, but they have like tens of
that reminds me
hours.
of a saying in French, plus ça change, plus ça reste pareil, which is the more things change, the more they stay the same. Or I suppose I could have just immediately gone straight to saying that in English, but doesn't it just sound so much better in French?
Yeah, so they have like tens of hours of videos. I didn't actually watch any of those, but I guess the kind of thing I support, but it's hard to get into it or get a feel for it. This one was pretty interesting, or at least the idea more so than the video. Also, another small-time producer, AGI Laboratory. I've shared them before, and it's about the Platonic computer, the universal machine from which everything is produced, and kind of like the Platonic forms. But what would it be like if there was a Platonic computer computation happening in the realm of the spiritual realm or the realm of forms? So it kind of like a Turing type machine, but from an esoteric point of view. So AGI
A
Laboratory.
Platonic computer? Is that what it says?
Platonic computer, universal machine from which everything is produced. So it's kind of like the concept of a Turing machine. But what if this was being produced in either at a quantum level or a realm of thought without an actual computer, or like if the world was a projection and the computer that produced the projection, what would computing look like on the other side? So kind of like a thought experiment, and the actual stuff is more kind of like Turing machine basics, but it's a pretty interesting concept. So maybe people check that out. Another quick video: how our brain makes conscious experience. Just a Cogito 137. Another basic overview. So file that there. Here's a good one. This one was Marcello Massimini, A Perturbed and Measured Approach to Detect Consciousness. Just talking about the methods available to us to the neural correlates of consciousness, the various things that could be measured, and what they indicate. The Society for Experimental Biology. I watched all 8 videos here in animal sentience, so basically animal consciousness. Important topic. I've been reading more about that as you study consciousness more. Neural correlates of consciousness and the senses like eyesight and hearing is very interesting because not all animals, different animals, organisms have different mechanisms of sensing, and so animal sentience is a big topic. Like JF, I guess, did years of research on monkeys. So I think that so that all 8 videos, not spectacular, but I watched some pretty good stuff. I found a new the Tokyo Club of Consciousness. So I watched a few of the recent videos, I guess one a month. So I hadn't heard about it, but some good lectures and good stuff. Here I mentioned this consciousness of Penrose Hameroff, and you notice that the first conference included like David Chalmers, and then David Chalmers broke off because he didn't consider Hameroff scientific enough. He was including too many, quacks or unscientific stuff, psychedelics and spiritual stuff. So they spoke about the way forward. Not that great of a conversation, but you see kind of the distant left teaming up. I watch, the University of California TV regularly. So they had an interesting conversation on the history of brainwashing from Pavlov to social media. It was actually pretty interesting, good lecture put together that traced some of the origins of the various experiments, including ancient time and then the modern era. You mentioned whether Pavlov, how closely he worked together with the communists, and how unethical the testing were, to today, where social media or brainwashing. What does it mean? So encourage people to check that one out. This was a really good video. I guess Veritasium is a math channel with very good graphics. I was mentioning this last week about the cubic. So we say that like completing the square and the quadratic equation. And so I mentioned for close to 1,000 years, here you have the quadratic equation. One of the big puzzles was the cubic, which is with x cubed, and whether you could solve it with an equation. So they talked about the geographic representation. So here was one method where they tried to complete the cube in the same way that geographically, to solve the quadratic equation, you basically complete the square, which would have been a geographical thing in the ancient times because they didn't think about it in terms of abstract algebra. And so eventually someone came up with a method to complete the cube, and then there's a history, kept it hidden, and then eventually the quadric was completed. And then also talking about the imaginary realm and why because it was historically solved geometrically, imaginary didn't make any sense. So it either had a geometric solution, and even though there may have been arithmetically another solution, either negative or imaginary, that didn't really matter. And then coming into modern physics, why the modern physics of Schrodinger's equation includes the imaginary number. So it was a really good video, good history lesson, and good graphical explanation about kind of what is imaginary numbers and how is imaginary numbers worthwhile for something real. Here was my talk with Robert, Islam for Europeans, went about 2 hours. If it's interesting, you could watch it. Something like had some views, already close to 200 views, but it's kind of related to interfaith or being a convert or born again Jew, or a lot of talk actually about immigration and multiculturalism. Okay, so here's this Uber Soy who interviewed me, and I think he's debated on Politically Provoked, so I'm not sure if he's going to post it or not. So it looks like Brittany has booked me for next week, Friday, 3:00 p.m. ET for Cultured Thug, and I had prepared this for today, a nicer
What a
version.
consummate professional. Just books you write in the middle of your own show, boosts the numbers. Wow. Tip my hat to Brit.
Okay, she might not even know I'm live right now. So
Just
I
leave
made
me
a
my
version,
little harmless illusions, please.
before, so I cleaned this up a little bit, and so here I have math and logic, which could also be seen as karma. So you said monism, where you have basically the sphere, but it could be some monic unit that gives rise to both the spiritual and the physical realm. And so here you could look at possibly Hamarov is probably a monist, or atheistic dualism. Maybe Hamarov is like an atheistic dualist, where it's saying there wasn't necessarily a creator. Usually people connect God and religion to the spiritual realm, but in modern even physics or new wave movements, a lot of times people believe in a physical and spiritual realm, or things like reincarnation of the soul, but they don't believe in a conventional God or creator. And so simply the same processes that created an unknown universe, maybe an uncreated universe, or the Big Bang, just say that maybe those also created a spiritual realm. So you could be an atheistic spiritualist that believes in the Big Bang, but at the Big Bang, something created consciousness, and consciousness exists, so to say, as a separate realm. And so it could be Hamarov actually fits into that realm where you say consciousness is a separate substance, but not because God created it, that arose, in a way similar to like the Big Bang, or similar to how we would explain the material realm raising, as opposed to deistic dualism, where you say there's a
Intrinsic to creation. How about that? Because that way it's still true, even if there was a Big Bang or not. If it's intrinsic to creation, the Big Bang was the creation event, or it wasn't. That's still true both ways.
Yes, I was saying within physics. I mean, so you could think that consciousness predated the Big Bang, but it's saying, for example, that there are schools that say consciousness.
I think we would just have to say that physics can't answer that, just based on quoting what other people have said.
We
Who
could
care about
model
those
it.
kinds of questions?
Could model it in the same way that.
Oh, is MTH going to save us? Because
Um,
this diagram, I gotta say, is definitely cleaner than the last one. Can you
yes, I
explain it
made
a
the
little
print a
more?
little bigger, and so you have deistic dualism, which is classic most religions, where you have some sort of deity that gives rise to both the spiritual and the physical world. And I give like a Kabbalistic or even Vedic model, usually where it'd be a progression, like the deity creates the spiritual world, math and logic arise out of the spiritual world, and then that dictates and rules, governs the physical world, or that the deity gives rise to math and logic, or you could substitute karma for that, and that karma is a ruling factor in both the physical matter and the spiritual world. So we were talking about the soul. So so to say, to prove the soul is very difficult, but to so to say, why is it easier to understand things in terms of a dualistic understanding of a separate world of spiritual mind and physical matter? And then also the question of karma, or say higher level rules. What are the origins of higher level rules? So if you just accept that there are these higher level rules, and they do in fact exist, and maybe you can't explain them, but you say that yes, there are higher order rules that govern the material realm. And so if you separate spiritual mind and body, then you have a question like, saying, does math and logic arise from mind? Is math and logic a ruling factor over mind? And then a question like, the deity, is the deity subject to karma, math and logic? So I'd made this diagram for today's conversation that didn't happen. So I guess with that, that's my week in review. So Not sure. I'll hand it back to Jennifer.
I've been working on some more diagrams. Got to rearrange this display here. Can you just talk for 1 minute while I resize this?
Okay, I'll try to do some sort of chant. I saw a video. There was this big rabbi from Israel, and they set up like a tent. They said like over 10,000 people came, and I saw them chanting. And I know it's a 3-part tune, although it only had like 2 parts, and I couldn't remember the first part. But I'll just chant a little bit of this because there are 10,000 plus Hasidim this week chanting this in Borough Park with Rabbi Alter Ager, Rosh Hashiva. Oy oy yam 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 mam yam yam. Actually, I think I messed it up. So I didn't even prepare a chant, but maybe I'll go back to the Sanskrit one, and I'll create some sort of vibe. The famous prayer for world peace, Loka Samasta Sukhinu Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhinu Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhinu Bhavantu. Loika samasta sukhinu bhavantu Hariom. So that's the famous Vedic, I think, ancient prayer for world peace. That's kind of saying that a monotheistic declaration that there's some sort of similar origin to all creation in the realm, and they should act peacefully in harmony. So maybe if that Jennifer's ready, and we could clean up some of the bad karma in the air, because it's pretty bad. Like I say, the karma is really bad out there. And God forbid you can't really talk to anybody anymore, and you try to talk to somebody, it's just like they really just want to cause damage to each other. Like the main desire in people's heart is basically to cause damage to each other, and it's probably related to just the current karma, where it's like, I've been wronged, and the only thing that makes sense to me is to pass on damage to other people. And so sure if Jennifer's ready.
I'm almost there, but your video is frozen here. So someone says 360p in the chat. Like, I'm sorry, I tried to put this up. And when I look at OBS, it says that it's going at 25 even, or 3,000 kb per second. I don't know how to make this better. I wish I did. And I don't care to figure it out, because every time I go to figure it out, it's like, no, I can't. I got other more important stuff to do. You're just going to have to deal with 360 or tell me how to fix it. Not that complicated.
I got another book on the psychology of
Let's hear it.
Humor. And so looking at the various theories, I guess they say now there's 88 different theories on humor. And but classically, till a few decades ago, and even some of the modern theories really are pretty negative towards humor. And kind of what I said, that humor is basically like from a Freudian level.
Yeah, and society's falling apart at the seams. So yeah.
Well, I'm saying they're related. But I mean, it's like there are more modern theories that don't take such a negative view on humor, or just some sort of mismatch error in prediction and expectation. But actually, factually, most of the evidence on humor points to some sort of aggression or subconscious thoughts becoming conscious, and usually in a negative way, that is, like, God forbid, of the murder, rape, steal type thing. That so I was reading this textbook, and besides the classical, like Aristotle, it mentioned the soul. Aristotle says that a baby doesn't get a soul till they laugh the first time. That Aristotle said laughter is a function of the soul, and you could tell when a baby's soul
Aristotle should have been right behind Socrates.
enters it. Yeah, there's actually quite a bit of evidence from testing on psychological fields that humor is basically a negative thing. It might serve some utilitarian purpose, but to say
That is
when you
insanity.
hear a person laughing, that it makes sense to intune negative intention. That factually that the best thing you could garner from laughter is in fact
That sounds like
negative
self-fueling
intention.
a paranoid delusions fantasy.
I mean, I was using the modern textbooks. There's actually been substantial amount of testing on humor and correlations between aggression or hidden aggression and laughter.
Aggression so hidden, you'd have to be paranoid, crazy person to detect it.
Well, it's in that laughter is
In
detection.
Ayurveda, it is considered not a good idea to repress the urge to laugh. So I'm going with that. It's also bad to repress the urge to cry, which I was reading in my text the other day, that apparently suppressed urge to cry can lead to giggling, which I thought was rather interesting.
Well, I mean, it could be.
there's
I'm not
just
saying you
give-
should suppress humor, but we're saying that
It's not, I'm going to say humor, I said laughing. Different.
laughing that you should suppress it. We're just saying that is what it reveals. So it's saying that if you're laughing, you're saying that you're letting out the fact that you have pent up aggression. And saying so, you're just saying that it's better to let out the pent up.
It's more like ha ha ha. Be thankful I'm not punching you right now, isn't it? Isn't it that the thing to take away from that?
Yes, I'm saying that basically is the message of laughter.
So shouldn't you be thankful that the person can contain their aggression and just chuckle instead of presumably? I'm not saying that I agree with this. I think it's a bit.
Well, I mean, you say okay, it's better that the person laughed than they attacked you, but the fact that they laughed is an indication that their real desire is to attack you.
Like at my family gatherings, it's a lot of laughter.
Maybe there's a lot of hatred amongst each other.
I just have a really hard time framing it. That would be the accurate narrative. That doesn't appear to be the minimum energy solution. Everyone's just walking around riddled. Okay, if they were riddled with hatred, they wouldn't be laughing. Because they'd be gripped and paralyzed by the hatred, and therefore reduced to some sort of trollish character that was too paralyzed to laugh.
It's Freud's civilization is discontent. That the animal urge is always there in the subconscious, and the laughter is an indication of the subconscious of the animal, the human animal. But we've talked about this quite a bit in the past. I'll put.
No, it's cool. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I think it's one of those things that you need to take a nuanced view on, otherwise, kind of goes off the edge of reason. But then, my concern with your argument is like, why laughing over any other? Are all bodily impulses on the same level? Of they should just not ever like why is laughter just seems to be standing out above all other impulses for no apparent reason in my eyes.
Well, laughter is a window into the subconscious because the person just saying like, oh, I want to hit you in the nose so badly. You're saying so that you might have a person who would just say that, but by saying the laughter is an indication into the subconscious. So say, okay, when you go to work, when you deal with your landlord, your boss, your superior, you say yes, sir, even though what you're thinking is like, I would so much enjoy to pound your face in, and so that's an indication of the laughter. That's the part of the dissonance.
I haven't felt aggression like that towards an authority figure
the person
since
says,
like
yes,
I was
sir,
in grade
the person
6.
says yes, whatever you say, but really they're thinking like my heart, I desire to kill you, I desire to cause extreme harm to you. And it's saying that's the natural, like if you're just looking at Freud in the civilization it's discontent, that's the natural human animal. And so like, of course, that's the way people feel, that there's no one is naturally subverted to another person's will, that naturally it's impossible to be submissive, that people who are submissive are doing against their own will. And but so if it's
hilariously, I feel like it's the exact opposite.
Okay, well, I just mentioned that I'm reading this textbook. I mentioned this in the past, and so it's interesting to show that it corresponds with some of the most modern testing and evidence.
Don't you think slave morality is submissive, and most everybody practices slave, aka conformity morality, which is by nature submitting to the edicts of the group?
Well, I mean, saying it's fear of punishment. The people don't act the way that they feel because of fear of punishment. I'm saying people really want to rape, murder, steal, but they don't because of fear of punishment. And so the laughter is a window into the true desire and nature of human desire. And so you could assume, the human animal is the animalistic desire is always there. The human animal is at the subconscious of all people. There's no way to rid the fact of, we have the greater controller that controls the action of the human animal. And whether someone who laughs is more likely to be aggressive or act in a way that you say, okay, like if a person's laughing, is it a precursor to violence? Could someone have pent-up demand and there be no signal?
I've had a bunch of guys aggress me, and it wasn't usually preceded by laughter, which is why I find your whole thing is, your whole theory appears to come from a complete dearth of experience.
Well, I saying the laughter is a form of sublimation, and really it's in like the laughter is the failure of the speech mechanism, and the reason the failure of the speech mechanism is because the person doesn't want to reveal their subconscious. And so that would be the basic mechanism, that the person's too embarrassed, like if it's a Freudian id, ego, superego, that the id wants to reveal itself, and the higher level functioning prevents the revelation of the id, the true subconscious desires, and therefore it comes out in laughter. And so, okay, if the person laughed, it's unlikely that they're going to take action. So laughter probably does work as some form of sublimation. That's also, as mentioned, that talking under your breath or talking under laughter, that there's even some studies that slow down laughter, because laughter is usually hyper quick speech, and that you could actually see that people are saying negative things.
It's a quantum transition. Okay, it's like a sneeze or an orgasm or anything else, just from one energetic level to another. It's probably closer to crying than anything else. Laughing. You can start to cry when you laugh too hard. Or not that.
That also, but I'm saying it's largely a breakdown of the speech function, like sneezing. That has.
Well, I was also reading in my textbook. It says if you don't cry therapeutically, periodically, you're going to cause buildup of uric crystals in your face, which can be really bad for your circulation in your skin. So yeah, there is a benefit to crying. And I've met a lot of people who are just too proud to cry, so that's an issue. And now this whole gaslighting with laughter is no good either. But I think laughing when someone's trying to be serious is not a concern for sure.
Sneezing and crying serve a normal biological function. Like it's in crying to just to get rid of irritants on the eye.
Laughing does too. It resets your focus. Like a tear, like clearing the cache or something.
It's unclear whether laughing serves a physical function. So, like,
remember, I used to defrag files on those computers back in the day. It was like a defragmentation thing. It's something like that. I mean, that's a metaphor, obviously, but it's a calibration.
Laughing is more cognitive function.
If you want to sit there and be condescending and look down on people for laughing, that's because you want to feel better than people, not because there's actually any basis to this being like
looking down,
psychotic.
It's a factual understanding of the operation of the human animal and the revelation of the subconscious. So you don't look down upon it. We are human animals. You have to look down on a person for revealing their human animal.
It's derogatory and has no precedent in Ayurveda, so I obviously not going to accept it. Effluent says they laughed many times when solving a puzzle or riddle.
Yes,
I can understand that. I can
There's
understand,
many theories on.
but I think it's more like an excited, like squeal for me if I solve a problem. Yeah, sorry.
The
Go
more
ahead.
neutral opinions on laughter are about expectation and changing expectation, like a play on words that just your mental prediction, demonstrating that the mental prediction mechanism is off, and that what the mind would predict uh, being something else that might be a neutral play on words that doesn't have, like I said, um, the Arthur Benjamin, what's the volume of a pizza with radius Z and height A? And so the answer is pizza, pi ZZA. So I mean, just like a simple mathematical joke that may or may, I mean, have some sort of some sort of uh, thought into humor, or even I heard this dumb one. Um,
Yeah, I think
an
those ones stop being funny like around like age 12.
You might find this one funny. You probably haven't heard that one. An infinite amount of mathematicians walked into a bar, and the first one says, "Give me a glass of beer," and the second one says, "Give me half a glass of beer," and then the third one says, "Give me a quarter of a glass of beer," and the fourth one says, "Give me an eighth of a glass of beer," and so on and so on to infinity. And the bartender just puts 2 glasses of beer on the table and says, "Know your limits."
Boom, sis. Yeah, that's a pun. Puns are cringe. I say don't go over 10% pun, but truly, you don't want to be even really thinking about a pun unless you're 8. Just
Well, there's an
generally, they can be
expectation
funny in an
factor
ironic manner, however, but yeah, 10% max.
that may or may not have like a connection to the subconscious, but it is also related to the subconscious becoming conscious because the expectation prediction model um, occurs in the subconscious. And when there's an error in the prediction model where you're expecting something and then you get something else and that you find humorous, that's also a revelation of the subconscious and a error in the prediction. But so the classical that it's more animalistic that the
Think of
uh, you
cognitive
know,
dissonance as an unfolding process where at first it's a tiny opening and then it's a gradually larger opening. And if you can catch it before it opens too big and laugh, you can disrupt the process and it won't happen. So it's basically a laughter instead of a stressful, shocking, anywhere from an irritation to flat on, like, no, my world is breaking down.
what laughter could serve as like a warning or the words that can't be said, like tell me how you really feel. And it's like you don't want to know how I really feel. It's going to hurt, and so just the laughter is the mechanism for people to express somewhat how they really feel, and so like it's
I think
physically a
it's more,
breakdown in the
isn't it more
communication method.
people sharing in a fun time when you're laughing? That's sort of to signal that you're all having fun together. That's what I always thought laughter was for.
Well, I mean, where'd you get that from? I mean, that was just your experience, even though there's no
Yeah, in my
there's no evidence
experience,
for that.
honestly, a lot of times when I was hanging out, the times we were having the most fun was, I mean, we weren't laughing the entire time, but there were very regular bouts of us all laughing in unison to some extent, sort
I
of
mean, what does fun
goofing
mean?
off.
I mean, fun is generally a negative thing, not a good thing.
Having friends is a negative thing.
Well, I mean, fun you probably just means wasting time, like enjoying being in your body. That you were saying about
Um,
what it mean to have fun, like you were just hanging out with your friends, enjoying uh,
well,
being
I'm
in your
partial
body
to
without
standing around a
without
campfire
actually.
drinking and talking about other times we stood around campfires drunk talking. That's just me.
Yeah, but you're not accomplishing anything, and you're together with other people, not accomplishing anything.
Um, I suppose you could put it that way if you don't value friendship at all or downtime or sitting
you
in a
value
chair
friendship, right?
drunk looking at a fire.
Yeah, I mean, so
But
the
some of us do
subconscious
value
is
those
saying
things.
like people are victims of circumstance. Really, you don't like each other. There's no, whatever reason that you're there together,
I'm sorry, it
karmatic
doesn't feel
reason.
like that. It feels like at first we liked each other a little bit, and then over time we just liked each other more and more and more. And that's why we kept hanging out.
Where you have association, so you're saying like, no, you don't really like each other more and more. You have the dissonance of
So
as
all
you
my
get to
feelings are
know
just
people
completely
more.
heckin' invalid then.
Well, it doesn't correspond to philosophy of mind. So I'm saying as you get to know each other more and more, you get more and more aware of the things about the other people that disturb you, that irritate you, that you don't like. And so, if you're okay, like
I
I'm
can't
still
relate
going
to
to hang
that.
out with these people, even though there's so many things about me that disturb them and I just don't like. And so, laughter is the dissonance reducing mechanism of the reminder to yourself and to others that even though you were chosen to have continued association, that my body still indicates to me that there's significant things about you that disturb me and I don't like. And so, from a philosophy, you're saying that's obvious that you have close
So no matter who
proximity.
it is, you
You
can't
might,
find someone to be your friend that doesn't arouse this feeling in you.
well, I mean, you could say that through acceptance, through humility, you wouldn't laugh, but laughter. You say that. I mean, there's going to be dissonant factors. The more you know somebody, the more you're around somebody, the more you're going to come to realize that there's things about them that you disapprove of, that you don't like, that you wish they would do otherwise, that you wish they would behave in a different manner, so on and so on. And if it's a prediction mechanism, that my understanding of how life works in karma is that if you do these things, it produces bad results. And so the person that I'm around with, spending time with, my associations, uh, there's a dissonance with my prediction method because they do a whole bunch of things that, according to my understanding, should produce bad results. So, okay, like whatever, it's their right to do what they want, even if it produces bad results. But that built up dissonance mechanism. So, like, you can't speak to people like that and get away with it, even though the person always basically just speaks to people like that. But you have a prediction mechanism, like, oh, well, that's why these bad things keep on happening to you, or whatever type.
I'm a bit lost. Are you saying your prediction mechanism is causing bad things to happen to you because it's faulty? Because that was
I'm
a lot of
talking
words
about
and it was hard for me to follow the sense.
universal philosophy of mind, that two people that have association with each other.
That's not universal though. Like I was just looking at my Ayurvedic textbook yesterday. It says you're supposed to foster friendships because it's good for your mental health. I didn't use those exact words.
I mean, you
So this
forgive
idea that it's
the fact
sort of
that the
like
person has many.
mutually tolerated hatred. Wow. You're not
Yeah, I mean,
really
basically, because
selling it
all
to
people
me.
have bad character and bad traits, and if you're in proximity to a person, their bad character and bad traits is going to become more and more apparent. It's basically going to be obvious, and then you're going to have laughter as the dissonance reducing mechanism for like you're like, well, you don't seem to be bothered by your bad character and bad traits, but I am, and so at some level you just have to have a distance reducing mechanism for being aware. You can't help but to be aware of noticing other people's faults, that especially if you're in close proximity to a person or you have a prolonged association, you're going to be well aware of the person's faults, maybe even better than they are, and that's going to
That's where
cause.
boundaries come in, so their faults don't irritate you.
Well, should I tell you every single time I see you about all the faults I've noticed about you? And you say, well, no. And the person probably
You're talking
couldn't
about
even.
me or people in general? Here.
Well, I'm talking about philosophy
What
of
the
mind in
hell are you
general.
talking about here?
I mean, that
Okay.
it's really. I mean, this is really the theory of laughter. So it's all people or relations. Any person in relationship to anybody else is going to have awareness of the other person's faults, and that will go in their prediction pattern recognition. That the person, I've noticed this person, I recognize a pattern that they have some faults, and so you have a prolonged dissonance of your patterns of what you
Or just
perceive.
thinking that it's beta to be bothered by other people's problems, so just figuring out a way to not be caused cognitive
When you
dissonance by
got
other people's
bothered, means
numerous flaws.
bothered is so let's say you aren't bothered, but it doesn't mean that the
Well, I
mind.
mean, it's impossible not to be bothered because that's where the boundaries come in. So maybe your boundaries are just not
Well, I'm
in the
saying that
right
the
place.
mind recognizes the pattern. So even if you're not bothered, you're forgiving, and be like, okay, people have faults, and I'm not bothered by the person's faults, but my mind still notices, and the pattern still recognized. Then you have the subconscious of the human animals. So he was okay. Usually I'm not bothered, but then occasionally I'm bothered, and the subconscious becomes conscious, and so God forbid, it could be the human animal could become violence, conflict, or it just comes out in laughter that say like what your problem is, and it's like so instead of telling the person what your problem is, you just both laugh because it's the universal dissonance reducing method that both of you recognize that everyone has a lot of problems, and having association with a person requires putting up with so to say their faults or the things they do that bother you, and so in a family situation, if your family gets together and everyone's laughing because everyone notices each other's faults instead of just constantly pointing out to each other everybody's faults, you just all have a big laugh and then put up and deal with each other.
I guess so.
I mean, I'm telling you,
I just choose to focus on people's
that's really
virtues.
the science of it.
No, I think you're right for probably most people that is sort of how it works. But since I focus on virtues, that's not how I feel.
You
But that
still have
would
the
be an
human
annoying
animal
way for
of
it
your
to happen, wouldn't
subconscious.
it?
Even if you focus, you still have the essential human animal that you are, that resides in the subconscious, and saying the pattern recognition that you could focus on the person's virtues, but your mind will recognize the
Yeah, but when I
patterns of
think about people's
faults.
flaws, I just feel sorry for people.
Well, you have a coping mechanism, but it's saying the mind is by nature going to recognize these patterns, and that's where the dissonance comes in. Is that even if you exert some sort of higher cognitive control to focus on the positive, judge people favorably, think of the virtues, that the mind will still notice the vice and the faults and the negative patterns that will reside in the subconscious, no matter how hard you try to suppress or sublimate it.
Sublimate. S&S. Probably not the right way to go if you want to. Well, what's your goal exactly? To have more
I'm explaining universal
control over the
mechanisms. There is
outcomes?
no goal, saying there's just universal mechanisms of human behavior.
Laughing like rats is not a universal pattern of human behavior. Laughing is highly context relative and culture relative, i.e. determined by a particular culture what would be funny to some very large extent. Non-trivial matter, big deal. But I don't want to belabor this point forever. Tej talked about me on his one appearance. I was so happy. I didn't really listen to the whole thing, but it seemed like they were trying to be nice, which made me feel good. So I don't know who these people are, but they both seemed cool, and it's nice to see Tej coming out of his shell. I won't play that right now. I looked at a book about monads, which is a bit of a strange idea that this word could be pluralized. I don't think that's the correct sense. Don't think it makes sense that there could be more than one. You could say there was like a relative monad, but it's still just one. And that's a very important structural facet. So this Leibniz guy, I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna be grading this homework assignment a very high grade. My only exposure to this, so far, is as well as indiscernible identity of indiscernibles, something much like the Gödel incompleteness theorem people just sort of throw around when it's convenient to their points that they spend a lot of energy trying to deceive themselves are happening in this magical vacuum, bereft of axioms, where they can just more or less manufacture what appear to be paradoxes, but aren't, like the Munchausen trilemma, which isn't really a trilemma so much as, I don't want to say an intentional misrepresentation of certain facts, but not to sound like Jay Dyer or anything, everything's circular within axioms. To try to deny that is irresponsible. And there are a lot of people who will affirm that the positions they represent do not have axioms. That is bullshit. You can always find out what the axioms are. So a person who is going to deny that is actually way weaker to having their worldview transcended some kind of flesh suit, like in Men in Black, where you can just throw that on and LARP as it easier than they can. Because denying facts like circularity of truths within axioms, and that something can only be true if it's not false, and it can only be false if it contradicts an axiom, and if it doesn't have an axiom to contradict, then true and false simply aren't defined. It saddens me a great deal that people can't follow something that complicated. To me, that's not super complicated, but some people are just flat out unable to follow something that complicated. So I do think there's room for improvement to a great deal, as long as, yeah, people are willing to put the time and effort in. So this is a diagram I just did, and I was thinking, like, I'm an impersonalist, but then most people aren't, so I should be accommodating the majority to some extent. So I made a personal version. It's still highly impersonal. It was a little bit personal because I put a face on the shape. But it'll make some more, but ultimately this shape, I didn't make it. Somebody who's much better at computers did. And they only cut out a certain amount of the surface. It's a modified version of what it actually looks like. What it actually looks like is just continuous in the perimeter. So this version's modified. It's got parts of the perimeter, quote unquote, three-dimensional perimeter removed. And that's to see the nugget or knot or whatever you want to call it on the inside, which also has segments removed. So the whole thing's just had tiny little segments removed in order to give it a more accurate representation. So what does it actually look like in real life? Well, it's a superfluid. So it's something either light or pre-light, or maybe it doesn't even matter, that you might want to call a torsion field. I don't want to commit to a title, but essentially it's, let's just imagine it's light, which is in a liquid form, a superfluid. So sort of a fluid, but any disturbance is instantly dispersed within the entire system. There's effectively no separation between all the states of this thing. That's what a superfluid is. So again, this is Thad's area, not mine, but so how would the superfluid behave? Well, it would have similar properties to a quantum waveform, which would mean that it would have a geodesic array, which would be subject to the same notion about observability as what we're used to with, well, it's basically the same reason as why we can't observe a perfect sphere, because even if the perfect sphere is there, which we know it kind of is, latently there, when we go to observe it, it's not quite at the perfect sphere. It's adjacent to it. So it's self-adjacency, which is the same thing as a natural vibration within matter, which is the same thing as certain formulations of the least action principle. So what it reduces down to is these cutouts would be the first approximation, but then you could get a better approximation by, instead of making one cutout, basically the limit as the size of the cutouts goes to 0, and the size of the whatever they're called, the parts that aren't cut out, inter-hole segments, both of those go to 0. But they don't form they don't form a flat surface because there's the wave form, self-interference. The prevention of the realization of the pure form. So there's an intrinsic vibrational nature to this entity, which then precipitates or predicts everything else. Sort of become hesitant to say predicts ever since my little evolution LARP debate. Thanks for saying my drawing's cute, Lambie. I appreciate it. The neat thing about having the apple and the mushroom beside each other is that they're both traveling in different directions. So the apple's falling down from the tree and the mushroom's rising up from the ground. And so the fleshy bit is on top of the hyperpump for the mushroom, whereas it's inside it for the apple. I haven't thought to quite explain why that is, but at this point it's an interesting observation, and I'm sure it'll become more self-evident what all the stuff means in time as we progress forward with thinking about this stuff. And that's about it for my week. I guess it's been a pretty productive one. Got a lot of cooking and cleaning done too, so yeah. Good one. Okay, just to say real quick, I don't know how talented of an artist I am because I did not make that diagram. I mean, I didn't make that body in the diagram. That's Bob from Reboot. My dad used to watch that show with us when we were kids. Hello? You there, Doooovid? I'm hearing a bit of scratching.
Yes, I got a little background noise. It's not too bad. So Stephen James is asking about the Charlottesville trial. I shared the video. I guess that's not too much updates on it. You know, like they're just the testimony, and they're trying to sow collusion or intention to violence, and in order to do that, they're going through Discord evidence. They're showing or recordings of people from various things, and it's, I guess, rather boring. And I guess there's a ton of lawyers. Like there's the defendants, as I mentioned, Cantwell and Spencer, defending themselves, and then there's like 20 different prosecutors. I'm not exactly sure. I guess even a lot of people tried to are still trying to get on as prosecutors to the case that just feel it's good for their law career to try to stop these people and ruin their lives. And although Kessler thought that they were hurting themselves, that it's kind of like all these New York lawyers coming into the Charlottesville, that it was unclear exactly what was going to happen. But so yeah, I don't think too much news. I know Luke Ford maybe tried to stream on it, and I'm not sure. Luke Ford just lost his mojo. I'm not sure if he could even make it interesting if he wanted to. Maybe he could probably get an interview with Jason Kessler or something like that. See, he's around, or one of the lawyers. But it looks like it's going to be a full 4 weeks. And Kessler mentioned that a lot of these people have been out of the limelight for a long time. They've been deplatformed, and so you have kind of like Cantwell and Spencer making these long speeches just because it's been the last time in a long time that they've had a platform to just tell people their ideas in front of a whole bunch of people. And so just carrying on, and where they're restating their philosophy, and then maybe the lawyers are trying to have some sort of shock value or like, did you say this, did you say that, and bringing up all this evidence. As I mentioned, theistically, there is every action that we do, every word that we say is recorded in a book. So if you have evidence in terms of internet, video, screenshots, old messages, that those are coming back. Although, theistically, say that, God not only knows everything we ever said and did, but also all of the thoughts of our head, all the desires of our heart. But I don't think there's too much happening in the trial. But it will probably carry on for another 2 weeks. and Deborah Lipstadt testified this week, about the nature of anti-Semitism and its connection to white supremacy and the Holocaust or whatever. And so there'll probably be another 2 weeks of this stuff. Most of it repetitive, so anyone's familiar with it, it'll be repetitive. And so there's no cameras in the trial room, so you have to listen to people who were there or the testimony. Even the news is hardly covering it. I tried to do some news searches, like MSNBC maybe has like a few minute clip every few days, or CNN, and that's about all the coverage. And you have to check like local Charlottesville news stations, and even them like are hardly covering it. So it's just a civil trial. It's probably not that interesting, and it's also each defendant to himself. So there could be a mixed verdict that will find some people guilty, and they could actually find a huge monetary. They could find them guilty and have to pay millions of dollars. More interesting was probably the Ahmaud Arbery and Kyle Rittenhouse trials that are going on, the nature of self-defense and using deadly force to protect property. That when it's self-defense, and when can you use, so to say, self-defense, not just for yourself but your property. So those trials have been much more interesting and in the news.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's been so long. It's not over, so I guess the verdict will be rendered, you said, within a couple weeks.
I think they set 4 weeks for the trial. So this, I think maybe it's 2 weeks. So there's another 2 weeks. And then the jury will deliberate. They probably won't deliberate more than a few days. And it's just going to be a financial amount. And so there's like 30, 40 different defendants. And they might even extend it more than another 2 weeks. And, so at the end of it, it's just going to be either a financial amount or, maybe they say that they don't owe any money. And, so this is organizers or speakers, and then people that claim that they were injured or suffered some sort of psychological damage in the melee of the event, even though they didn't directly suffer anything at the hands of the defendants, but because they had an organizational factor. And as I showed last week, there's more like the SPLC and certain organizations that are really just using it as a deterrence. So they basically found defendants willing to sign on the suit, and the goal of this is to, I guess, ruin these people's lives in a way to teach a lesson that people won't forget. So the next time anyone ever thinks of doing something like this again, they'll have to think again, which God forbid, I don't think it really works that good as a strategy, but that's what you're saying. That's what's being employed.
God forbid. So there's a question about whether we're black boxes to some extent. We have predefined, to the extent that we are, because we can't really analogize ourselves as machines, because that's where the problems start. And then next thing you know, you sound like logical, floggable, blobbable, right? But as far as the supplies, we could be described as having some inbuilt coefficients that we may be able to update to some extent in a black box fashion. And it is, our learning process is like a black box in the sense that we don't really know why it works. We have this idea that we're making decisions on some grand unified basis when really the decision gets made and then rationalized, and we're mistaking the former for the latter process, by and large. So we are able to get information through a process which could be said to be black boxing, as it's entirely dependent on input parameters for the training. But then it's more complicated. There's theoretically some self-updating going on. So that would only be a starting point for an appropriate model. And no, I don't think we should call it black blobs, because you still want to have access to what's already well defined, but you want to constrain it to what it actually applies to, lest you sound like some fucking tool trying to say that the term isomorphism isn't constrained to the domain of mathematics. That level of toolishness. We want access to what already exists, like calculus, etc., but we don't want to be overstating what those systems say, because it's not even about how it sounds. It is not proper. So where's the metaphor apply? It applies where it applies, aka wherever I say. And then it doesn't apply anymore. Anytime it might contradict the deeper principle, which is the of quantum computing, aka centralized processing, something light, which now we're learning through Thad's thing is actually a superfluid, which appears to actually precede light in the causal order, which is yet to quite be established, because it's hard to know exactly what Thad's algorithm is doing and how it's simulating the microstates. But we're getting closer. And I think soon I should be able to talk through the arising universe, so to speak, invoking Thad's model more on the basis of microstates. Maybe not thermodynamic microstates, but something along those lines. Hey, Roger, nice to see you.
So you just want to do a short show this week? I guess I'm not that talkative. And,
I had one question I don't know if you know the answer to, but yeah, we can wrap it up soon if you've said all you want to say. Are qualia neural correlates of consciousness? What's the difference between those two things?
when qualia are the individual aspects of consciousness of any. So, I mean, from a qualia should have neural correlates. And if you're a materialist, that qualia are completely produced by the material phenomenon. But I mean, qualia is like any given smell, taste, experience, or possibly even cognition, thought, as opposed to the grand consciousness as there being a controller, singular me or I that controls the whole body. And qualia is just any individual conscious experience. So, like, yeah, obviously, like I was mentioning last week with the 3 parts of the spinal cord, that in sense experience, we know pretty well the neural correlates. For example, like if it's a pressure touch, that something touches your one of your fingers or part of your body, that or even vision, hearing, that the neural correlates are basically completely well known of what happens on the receptor cell, how that reaches the brain, and but what is the experience? It's okay. There's me that felt my finger touch something. That's still somewhat ununderstood. That what does it mean that there's a me or I that sensed this perception? But so the neural correlates that's the part we can understand. And then if you have a dualistic or model of consciousness where you could explain, like, you're not going to solve the hard problem of consciousness to give a full explanation of what's going on, but you could you could have the neural correlates, and then you could have your model of mind, and how your model of mind describes the internal aspect of consciousness. Or you could reject consciousness, so that consciousness isn't actually a phenomenon, that there's just these neural signals and action reaction and whatever's going on in our heads may not have correlation or even thought. And from my dualistic model, that the controller and thought doesn't have neural correlates. that that some level they would, but so that if you're a dualist, that the neural correlates are purely related to sense perception and motor control, and not related to thought. But the question of the controller, that even if the controller, you're a dualist and the controller arises from out of the body, that there's a neural correlate, because the neural correlates of the sense perception and then the neural correlates of the action, where the brain eventually sends a signal to the body that creates action.
Yeah, that's got me curious on how they're defining signal. Also, I wouldn't mind hearing what you're going to talk to Watkins about, if you wanted to go into it at all, or you just want to save it for when you talk to him again. But
Yeah, I don't know how much of a planned conversation it is, so I was just gonna. He was gonna go first and do some sort of PowerPoint, and I was gonna, just try to explain that why a dualistic model has a better understanding of how the world operates, or how you could see the world in such a way, as I mentioned, like karma, action, reaction, thought. We're saying the mind, the controller, existing in a separate non-material realm, and then what the benefit of viewing the world in that way is. And it's just like the mind's eye is not the visual eye. It's not the eye that sees the material realm. The mind's eye, so to say, sees um, both the spiritual and the material realm. And that's the benefit of dualism, is the belief that there is this second realm, and that the mind's eye sees it, and that the mind exists in it. And then certain phenomenon, that if you're a materialist, like karma, um, reward and punishment, righteousness, good and bad, uh, almost necessitate existing in the non-physical realm. So not that you can necessarily prove the soul, prove the spiritual realm, but you could say that there's systems for operating the world, for how you go about being a person, for how you go about understanding things, that are either materialistic or dualistic. And certainly most religions have a dualistic, like I mentioned in our first conversation, that rituals work. And for rituals to work, uh, it largely necessitates a spiritual realm, where there's an action reaction concept that doesn't occur in the material realm. And then to say the mind's eye is capable of seeing these non material things. So that was the angle I was going to go at it, but it wasn't going to be like a formal debate, because it's very hard to prove. So it was, I guess, more going to be epistemological about the cost and benefit, or good and bad, of viewing the world in such, in one way or the other.
you figure it'll happen this week?
No, I doubt it. Like I think Sunday is like the only day that there possibly could do it, and Sunday's not the best for me. But I said I'd do it, so maybe they'll message, and we'll end up doing it next Sunday. But I have no idea. It'll probably be pushed off, and I guess neither one of them are very good at scheduling. I took civil engineering and scheduling, so it's really not that difficult. But if they don't have available schedules to schedule it out, and so we just have to postpone even scheduling it. So it's remotely possible that we'll try to do it next Sunday afternoon, although they might not know till next Sunday. So unfortunate.
Were you thinking of maybe having him on your channel just to chat instead?
I was, and then Arjun came back and said like he was going to be able to do it, and then I think Ben had to cancel last moment, so I didn't bother trying to schedule for him on my channel, because I thought we were going to do the Theology Unleashed. So I'm not sure. I don't like pressure people, and if he's just not capable of scheduling, he's not capable of just like looking, picking a day and sticking to it. It's hard to work with somebody.
Yeah.
As opposed to, Brittany, who, messaged me and she said Friday the 19th at 3 p.m. ET. And, I don't know, cultured thug, but, like assuming he's going to be able to put that on his calendar. And, so that's it. It's settled. And then post it. But so it'll be Friday the 19th at 3 p.m. ET. So whatever reason, Arjun and Ben aren't able to do it like that.
Well, I hope it gets sorted out, and then that'll be fun. And one thing I did that I didn't mention yet was I didn't talk almost at all during a conversation that happened on the T-Jump server. Because they needed to have a mod to supervise the stage. Otherwise, they want to shut it down, like for safety and everything else. So I just hopped on and explicitly said I did not want to contribute to the conversation. Just wanted to facilitate it. So that was a very fun experience. I actually recorded it. I can probably put it up on the channel. Sorry, I just looked at the comments there in the chat. It was about polygamy. And there was a guy from Saudi Arabia on the call giving us a bit of a deep dive. So I thought it was somewhat interesting. So look forward to that. Yeah, I guess that's about it. All in all, so things aren't getting any better there. You still not so hopeful for things in the U.S.?
No, unfortunately not. But I'll just keep on doing my research, or like my bookstore is going all right. Even like Weekend Review, I'm down on Weekend Review, and the ability to have guests or conversations. So, but I'm not down on the research or the advancement and these ideas. So I'm glad you're making some progress and making some progress. So there may not be advantage in carrying it on. We just say, okay, we reported our progress and go back to another week of work.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I'll be hopefully looking into that Leibniz stuff this week. I want to say I want to make a video, but I've started so many videos and never finished them due to lack of inspiration, so I'm just not even commit to anything right now. Do you have any final words before we say goodbye? Until next week.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I guess if you want to ramble yourself, you feel free. And I don't have any streams planned this week. Charles Moskowitz. Actually, I said I was going to have Claire on this week, so we talked about he wants me to book him some shows. So I said I told him we should start having guests on. I think he booked Ralph, but I'm not exactly sure when. He might do that by himself, and then so hopefully Claire will have him this Thursday. Usually he doesn't make like pre-link, so but it should be Thursday 1 p.m. ET. Luke Ford 9 p.m. Eastern on Politically Provoked. So I should be in the chat for that. And so not much. Just continue the research. People find us on social media or Discord if they want to continue the conversation. So thanks for doing this. Have a great week.
Oh yeah, dude. Someone says they love you. Tinkle Tink says love you, Doovid. So
okay, well, thanks, appreciate it.
Feeling the love. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll talk to you next Sunday, if not sooner. And really appreciate the positivity in the chat. Know it's hard sometimes, but I feel like everybody brought their best self today, which is exactly what we're going for, the mutually creating a positive environment of support and something conducive to personal growth. Thank you, and
that's just a
good night.
So to say, a worthless opinion of.
It's so important that she can't be told, she won't be told that it's wrong. And
bringing it back to Church of Entropy and her attack dog, Gandalf the White.
Why don't you learn to shut up and fuck your goddamn logic?
they control the media, and the media is capable of making the sheeple believe in anything.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, we've had these streams, and I've been doing with Church of Entropy, and she's been bringing on new people, and like we did those streams on like stream etiquette. We walked through like the technology.
I have like very strongly negative opinions of the kind of Brundle clique.
Is she trying to garner